Willkommen beim Nerds of Law Podcast. Die Nerds of Law, das sind Katharina Bisset und Michael Lanzinger. Wir präsentieren euch Neuigkeiten zu Recht und Technik, spannende Interviews sowie Tipps und Tricks generell zur geekigen Seite des Rechts. Denn vergesst nie, Law is the ultimate science.
Nerds of Law, Episode 48, True Colors, with TimeQube.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Nerds of Law podcast, this time again in English, since we want to talk with our host also in English. And so today we welcome Andy from the very good product TimeQube. I found the TimeQube a rather interesting way to keep up time, to measure time on the internet, I think via an ad on Facebook, and I immediately bought it and are very happy with it. And therefore we made contact with TimeQube to get them before our mic. So welcome, and please tell us a bit about ourselves and also about your product.
So my name is Andy. I'm the CEO and founder of TimeQube, a Polish company that manufactures and sells a line of 3 products called TimeQube. And I've been roughly 12 years in the enterprise, working for huge companies, the big 5. And what I did was mostly team management and Scrum mastering and agile coaching, which is basically a job around improving the ways teams work. So this is what I do by my job, by education. And in 2018, whilst working for the enterprise, I had this idea and came up with TimeQube, the first TimeQube Classic, and since then sold over 1,300 devices to more than 15 countries.
Wow.
As you said, you came up with the idea of the TimeQube, and your product is a novelty insofar that the time measurement is not about like numbers or ticking down, but it uses colors. So how did you come up with this special idea?
As I mentioned, I had a lot of meetings in the companies I worked for, and these were companies from different cultures, with a different setup, with a different way of working. But the one thing that was common for all of them was that there was an obnoxious number of meetings. And I would start out bringing a timer to the meeting, but that would never work because people hate timers in meetings. Because there's something that ticks, there's the alarm at the end, people get stressed out by numbers and countdowns. So I thought I had this idea one morning that why don't we try to do that with colors? And so I had the first prototype of this device done, I think, back in something like 2015. And I brought a very ugly box made of a lamp bought off AliExpress for $1 or so, where you had all the insides replaced by, I think it was then the Raspberry Pi, or that sort of microcontroller. And that was like, had its basic functions, it worked. I brought it to the meeting and I realized that it actually works, that it did not stress people, but it gave them like a very gentle push that they should speed up, something that people around would see as well. So it worked just great. And so I embarked on the journey to create a product that would be a mass product and that would sell to the world.
Could you explain a bit more what it is and how it works for those who haven't tried it yet?
TimeQube is a visual timer, and what it means, it does not use countdowns, it does not use numbers or any other kind of medium. Instead, it uses colors. And not just any colors, the colors that we're used to since childhood, because we're used to green, yellow, red as the signal lamps in the street. When we're crossing the street, we're used to not cross when it's red, and we're used to be prepared when it's yellow or orange, and we're free to go when it's green. So even as kids, we're already used to these colors. And because we're used to them, if I show you the time using these 3 colors, what happens is I'm bypassing your conscious perception and I'm talking directly to your subconscious, which means you will not spend time on trying to analyze what the color means because you already know that. Instead, you will just subconsciously understand, hey, this means I only have half of the time left, or this means I have a lot of time, or this means I really have to wrap up because the color is green and it will start blinking soon. So this is the psychological part, which not many people know of or realize, because it actually works on people's subconscious and they never even try to understand. But this is how TimeCube works. And we have done a lot of research around vision and about around human peripheral vision, around how our vision works, about how we use eyes to focus on certain things in the field of view. Um, and it actually turned out that this is the only combination that works this way. These colors plus a glowing object, because TimeCube essentially is a glowing cube, and you put it on the table, and everyone around just doesn't have to focus on the TimeCube at all, because your subconscious does it for you. You can focus on the meeting, right? And that's how it works.
That is very much true because I use the TimeCube in also in meetings with clients, and it works perfectly for me because I instinctively know without looking at the clock, which is on the opposite to my desk, when to kind of wrap up or when we're in the middle of things, and so it's really practical.
I've got a
Oh yeah,
question.
it
Um,
is. It is.
when Michael first showed it to me, and I've told the story already that he gave me a time cube as a present when I opened my own law firm, my first thought was, well, isn't it rude? You know, if you're sitting with a client and you've got a 1 hour scheduled meeting, you know, to remind people, okay, you know, get it going, we need to wrap up, as if I had, I don't know, something more important to do. Was that ever something that you were concerned with, or am I just being paranoid?
If you turn this situation or this scenario around, what you're actually doing by putting this in front of the client, no matter what kind of industry you're working in, there are always going to be meetings with clients. And if you put it in front of the client, um, it all depends on how you look at it and how you sell it to the person. When you're putting it in front of a person and saying, hey, I value your time, we have 1 hour to talk, so I make sure that we don't run over time.
Yeah.
This works magically with all the clients I've been meeting. This really works magically. And there's a like an X factor because there's certain hype around how the cube looks like. It's a glowing cube. So even if you pull it out, if you did it with a timer, it wouldn't work because everybody knows timers and everybody hates timers. But with a glowing cube, it works magic because people are interested immediately about what it is. And then you tell them, this is going to make sure that we don't run over time, right? So that's the way and I have even a more interesting case for that because so you guys have the TimeCube Classic, which was the first product that we sold, uh, and the second one was TimeCube Mind, which is used in a much more vulnerable environment because it's used by psychotherapists. It was created with psychotherapists for
Oh.
psychotherapists, and the case that you have there, apart from we're not using color red, the transitions are a bit slower. It's all been developed with the community of psychotherapists. But what's important there is that the client you're talking to is actually much more vulnerable to whatever you're doing. And the common case there is that I have to look at the watch or I have to look at the clock to make sure, because I have another client. It's normally 50 minutes that therapists have for the clients. And so looking at the clock or looking at a watch is actually extremely distracting.
Of
And in
course.
some corner cases, can actually make the client go really angry, really sad, and even feel deserted by the therapist, that they are not paying enough attention to their problems. So you can imagine that in this case, when the therapist does not have to lose eye contact with the client, this is exactly when this case we're talking about is working magically.
Okay. I once had to use it on Michael because we were doing a lecture, a course with a client together. We were teaching them, and he was overdrawing a lot. And a couple of days later, we did a course about legal tech where we showed our tools. So what I did, I put the time cube on a stack of books so that it would always be in view. And I told people about it, and I said, look, this is what we use, and it'll turn orange and then green, orange and then red. But really, it was for Michael, so he wouldn't. So he wouldn't
Exactly.
talk for too long.
Because the magic thing about the angle of human vision is that you can actually discern elements of your visual field up to 170 degrees.
That's a
So
lot.
when you're in front of me and I'm looking at you, you're a perfectly crisp, solid element of my of my field of vision. And the elements on the boundary of my vision field, that's 170 degrees, they will be blurred. But if we put a time cube out there, you will still see the colors changing, and you will know green is changing to yellow, even though you're looking straight ahead. That's like, I think, the most useful case when you put it away from your center of your vision field, but you still are aware of passing time.
So you already told us that you now have different versions of the TimeQube. So which are these versions and what are the main differences?
So the one that you guys bought was TimeCube Classic. This was the first product, which was meant for business environments, so mostly offices and meeting rooms, which happen to also be used in education because with 45 minutes time, it's used a lot by schools and educational facilities. The second one I already mentioned as well is the TimeCube Mind, which is specifically created for psychotherapists to use it instead of clocks and watches. And the third one is called TimeCube Home Office Edition, which is meant to be used at home. And actually, Office Edition, Home Office Edition, and Mind are the two products that are our best sellers this year. You can imagine why, because in 2020, people stopped to go to the office because there were lockdowns everywhere. So people ended up in their home offices. And what was the biggest problem for people they encountered in their home offices? For a lot of people, this was the first time they ever did a home office. The biggest problem was distractions and not being able to focus. So we created a time cube, which is basically still the same product, but the difference is it has different times which are made with the Pomodoro technique in mind, so that they help you focus using a technique that's been around for many, many years. And the cube itself, when you put it on the desk, when you're working from your remote home office environment, can be used as a signal for other household members that you're busy and you're working. So whenever the time cube is on, you teach your kids not to distract you, and they magically start to listen to you and they start to respect the time cube because kids love play, kids love gaming, and because this is a cube that changes colors, it just works with kids very well. And we have already, with using that information, we've been able to make Home Office Edition our bestseller this year, and the Classic, because people still are on lockdown, many of them, is the third option for customers most.
Well, I currently actually think about getting myself the Mind Edition and also the Home Office Edition because I think I like the Classic really. But in the case of my conferences with clients, I sometimes think it would be the Mind Edition even more useful.
I
But
think
well,
because your clients are charged with crimes, they're a bit more sensitive than
yeah,
mine.
that's the
So
thing. That's
It might be the case because if you feel that customers or clients can be sensitive about certain colors, and we are wired somehow as human beings to be sensitive to color red, then the mind does not use red and instead it uses purple. But still, in the brain, it works the same way. So it doesn't need any additional analysis from the left brain. And it works. So maybe that would also work in such a sensitive environment as yours, in the legal environment.
well, I think I just get one, then I try it out, and if it doesn't work as intended, I get back to you for a special lawyer edition.
Oh yes, you can do that, and you have 100 days to return it. So so you can always return the cube if it doesn't work for you.
Oh no, I wouldn't return it. I would just suggest the lawyer edition. I don't know
Oh, the
which
lawyer.
colors then, but
That sounds good.
Yeah, can we have like little the Austrian and German paragraph and a little gravel and the scales have printed on it and stuff?
I think we can definitely talk about it. Maybe that's a very good target group to have a new version of TimeCube with the times that are defined especially with lawyers in mind and the colors maybe, options are limitless here.
Yeah, I mean,
that's perfect.
we've talked about it before a bit because both Michael and I have like a fixed price package for a first consultation, which is around half an hour, but let's say an hour max, and that's a good way to say, okay, when it turns yellow, you know it's half an hour, so you should start wrapping up, but you wouldn't go over the red. So I think that is a very practical way of dealing with it, because if you have a fixed price package, you need to manage your time and the client's time well as well, I think.
Agree here. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is exactly the way I tend to use it. So I tell them, okay, it's I put it on for like around 30 minutes, but I plan 60 minutes, and I tell them, okay, after 30 minutes now, you know your time, like the time you kind of bought is up. But if you need more time, it's no problem. There's no more money to be charged. But think about it so that you wrap up. But I also think a very useful way is when you go with the about 5 minute setting, because the time cube can be used to you just push it down and then it starts the cycle. And I think this is very interesting in meetings when you say, okay, we have a discussion, and everybody just keep it short and simple. So maximum 5 minutes, like
That's not short.
for to speak, yeah, for discussion. So you hand it around, and you always
That's
push it.
exactly how we initially thought it would work. So with this short time periods, like 2 and 5 minutes, we've intended it to be a token of open microphone. Just what you described, just handing over, passing on the time cube, so that everyone in the room can be heard, whereas they have the same amount of time to talk. So that's the way software teams, for example, use the time cube in their agile meetings, where you need to run around in the team, and then you still have to be on time and you still have to keep the time box. That's how it works. And with the 30 and 60 minutes time, obviously, this is for most meetings that people do in a business environment. So that's how it works.
So before you told us about the Pomodoro method, which I and Katerina already know because we both use it to get things done for a bar exam when we learn for the bar exam. But I think most people don't really know about the Pomodoro method. So first question, can you tell us something about it? And second question, do you use this method of time management?
Yes, so Pomodoro technique was created, I think, in the 80s by a university student in Italy called Francesco Cirillo. And that method he used in the beginning because he had a problem focusing on his studies. Most of the time was about studying at home, cramping books and so on. So what he did, he experimented on himself with different settings, because what he figured out in the beginning is that when you work in chunks and do breaks in between, you're more focused and you're basically able to do more work within the day. So he ended up with this perfect settings, and there are actually this conservative original Pomodoro is when you're focusing on one task for 25 minutes, and then you do a 5 minute break, and then you do another Pomodoro, so called. So that's another 25 minutes, and after three of those Pomodoros and three breaks, and the third break would be longer. So you do Pomodoro and the break, then another Pomodoro and the break, and then another Pomodoro, and then a longer break. Usually that's how it works, so that your brain can refresh, so that your brain can again, by having a break, by having some freedom from focusing or paying attention to a specific task, it can, in fact, get some rest. And then you would lay out, if you need to focus, just like students do, right? If you need to focus throughout the entire day and you have a limited amount of time before your exam sessions that are normally in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, then you really have to plan how you're going to learn. And so that made Francesco the most productive when he was studying, but that then was adopted by knowledge workers, by companies, as the best way to actually focus. There is another book called The Deep Work by Cal Newport that says about focus work a lot, and it also bases a lot of its statements and hypotheses and theories, and actually factual research that they did based on this original Pomodoro technique.
Yes,
So
I've
it's
read
it's a
that. It's
very
very good.
interesting thing. It's a next very interesting technique that I personally use, but not for everything. Because sometimes when I'm running creative sessions with my team or on my own, I prefer not to be very limited by 25 minutes. Sometimes you just need to be working on something for 2 hours because you're getting yourself into the state of total flow. And that would be a bad idea to actually break that flow. So then you do it. But normally, if you have small tasks and you have a lot of them, I would definitely go for Pomodoro 25 plus 5.
The name from the Pomodoro method stems from, I think, the kitchen timer that was originally used, which was in the form of a Pomodoro.
A tomato.
So,
Exactly. The kitchen
Yes.
timers are, yeah, I think I even had a tomato like that, a tomato timer like that when I was a kid. We had one in the kitchen. And then,
yeah,
it would take TikTok. That was the thing about it.
yeah, I also remember this. But when learning for the bar exam, I use an app, a Pomodoro app, and it is very funny because I still have the app and I sometimes use it. And from time to time, a colleague asked me, "So, how long did you take? How much did you learn? How many hours?" And I always can tell them. I look it up and I say, "Okay, that was about this and this Pomodoro." And now I know because it's were each Pomodoro 25 minutes, so I can tell them how long or how much time spent of learning for the bar exam. So it's a funny thing that I can still like kind of remember it.
Well, it's only
Nice.
funny
Yeah.
because you passed, and now it's not as sad when you look back at the numbers or
Yeah,
want
I
to
know,
cry.
I
It's
know.
not a
It's only
trauma,
funny when
right?
it. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
But it kind of helps people because sometimes I teach also lawyers to be on how to learn for the bar exam, and they always ask me how do you can how are you able to like learn this amount of information, this huge amount of information. And then I can tell them, well, I used the Pomodoro method and I broke it down in chunks, and that's the way to go. And people, I don't know if everybody uses it, but I think some people at least try it out or give it a try.
yeah, I definitely think people should give it a try, or give a try to any kind of uh, personal productivity methods or techniques because they're just useful. Without them, everything is more or less chaotic and unstructured. And it's good to give a structure to focus because that's how it works.
Now I've got a question. Sorry.
No, no
You
problem.
said you come from agile project management and you use it to time agile meetings. Maybe not all our listeners know how it works. Could you maybe quickly describe how the system of agile project management works and how you would time, what kind of meetings would you time, and yeah.
Right. So Agile goes in pair with Scrum usually, and it's mentioned together with Scrum because it all started with Scrum, which is a very simple methodology to get work done, which says that you as a customer, when you're asking me to provide you a product, we shouldn't define everything upwards. We shouldn't define it all of it in the beginning. Instead, me as a developer or me as a provider of a product, should basically work in small increments and show you the work as we go so that you can make up your mind whether what I'm doing, the direction I'm going in, is the right one or not. And because before, for many, many years, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of years, work was done in the way called the waterfall way, when you're basically planning everything out in the beginning, and then there is no way you can accommodate any changes. Like the customer changes their mind about what they want to build, or the market changes, or the resources that you have changed. The waterfall does not take into consideration that these things happen. And in Agile, we just do a small portion of work called the iteration, and we show it to the client so that they can tell us whether this is a good direction. And it is okay to change requirements in Agile. This is very important. I think it's initially been introduced in late 90s in the software development industry, but ever since, people figured out that actually this way of working is very useful outside of software development as well. And for example, in HR, where you have a lot of tasks that you have to go, the so-called transactional task where you have to go through each day, it makes sense to actually work that way when we are planning our work for the next 2 weeks, and we're trying to make the work done without distractions from any other tasks if it's possible. And then we can basically have something done within a limited time box, a limited time, and then we basically analyze how we did and if there's anything that we can improve. That's what Agile is, that's what Scrum is. There's a lot of communication, there's a lot of human-centric approach in Agile, which means, for example, one of the most important uh, like building blocks of Agile is that people are more important than processes, but because it's actually people that get work done. So that's I think that's an umbrella term for a lot of different things. But at the end of it, there is just one question that we're trying to answer, which is how can we make teams of people work more efficiently while still being happy and motivated?
Oh, that's very, very cool. So, and then with the time cube, if you time your meetings like that, you know, okay, we've got short meetings, everyone knows how long it's going to take, everyone has their couple of minutes to say how they were getting on, and then you move on. That's
You
very
know, we
cool.
have since the beginning, TimeCube was a remote company. So we did not have an office. We still don't have an office. There is no one base for the TimeCube headquarters, because we're still a small group of people, and actually we do our meetings online. So very quickly, we started to think about the online version of the hardware TimeCube to use it during our remote meetings. Um, but yeah, we definitely do Timebox, and it's really important to us to keep the Timebox, because if you don't keep the Timebox and you have a team meeting, no matter what kind of meeting you have, if you don't keep the Timebox, very quickly your team members will start to be demotivated. And this is something subconscious again, because you might not be able to tell consciously why you're demotivated, but this thing called the time box and not keeping it makes people feel like their time is not valued. So there's something very uh, very important about how humans perceive time and how much value they attach to time.
So time boxing is basically a way to say, okay, we put a certain deadline, a certain, so this meeting is going to be an hour and that's it. No extras, no nothing. So you have
Yes. Yes,
certain
and this might
tasks.
sound a bit cruel, right? It might sound a bit cruel, especially when you have a big topic to discuss and you allot 1 hour to discussing it. And at the end, you realize that we haven't even reached the goals of the meeting. We have to extend the meeting, we have to make it longer. But no, this tells you that the structure of meeting was wrong, that you should have had prepared the meeting better. You should have had to have the right question, the right agenda. You should have had the facilitation for the meeting, maybe, if it's a complex meeting with a lot of where you're expecting to be a lot of emotions, for example. But you shouldn't extend the meeting. That's always the worst idea. It's even better to call another meeting and time box it again than extend the current meeting, because then people are sort of in a situation where they don't know when it's going to finish, and this is the worst thing ever. You remember when you went to somebody was publicly speaking, or there was some kind of presentation in front of a lot of people, and you have a guy that talks and talks and talks, and because you don't, and sometimes you don't even know how long he's going to be talking, and you wish he stopped because he's boring, but he won't, right? So that's very important to realize how much people have. And public speaking is one of very, very, very good cases for TimeCube. And a lot of public speakers are actually using the TimeCube in front of them because, again, this way they show the audience that they value their time.
It's an interesting kind of thought and philosophy, and it leads me to my next question. You also, on your website, you have a blog where you provide information concerning timekeeping. There, I've also read for about timeboxing. What are other things you could sorry? What are other things you could suggest, especially for lawyers? Our time and also the time of our clients is very valuable. We do billable hours, so is there anything which immediately comes to your mind?
Yeah, so there was this example from I think a few years back when I was trying to sell time cubes to a law firm, and law firms uh, were never my target group. We knew that TimeCube would sell in companies probably, but law firms. I was interested in that use case, and I asked a lawyer. I went to a lawyer. I had something I had to talk through with a lawyer, and I went there, and I showed him the TimeCube, and he told me, "Hey, we would never use it because we want our customers to spend as much time as possible with us because we'll bill by hour." And then I thought, well, technically it's true, but on the other hand, it doesn't sound very fair or ethical. So to me, and in Poland, lawyers have a very bad reputation of
Okay.
ripping people off, basically. And
Oh,
I
They do
think
worldwide.
I think part of it is maybe a misunderstanding of what lawyer does, but I think a grand part of it is because that's what a lot of lawyers has created around them, the kind of atmosphere around them, uh, and I don't think that necessarily has to be true. I think that you can use the time cube in front of your customer, showing them that you actually value their time, and you have, just as you said, in this free package, free beginners package, you have half an hour, maybe 1 hour of time they can use. And even if you're timing your meeting with a client, and you're basically, you know that you can lead the meeting, the discussion in such a way that 1 hour is enough, uh, and that gives both the customer that kind of freedom to talk for 1 hour, but it gives you cues about the time. It gives them cues about the time without stressing them. So I think what's important is that lawyers are pricey. That's true,
yes.
but also I think that 1 hour should be very well used, and the Tycoon can help in structuring that 1 hour of client call.
Yeah, and I also think that more and more lawyers are moving away from a hourly rate package and say more like fixed price packages rather than just billing by the hour. I think that's changing a lot as well these days because timekeeping itself can be a lot of work. So if you have to write down every 5 minutes you spend on something, that's sometimes more work than doing those 5 minutes.
Exactly. And I think what lawyers do, what you guys do, is extremely important. And it's probably not very nice to work in an environment where, the customers, well, maybe not openly, but still think that, nah, that lawyers are this, lawyers are that. I mean, that's your career, that's what you do, and I think people should totally value your work because that's a lot of work going into being a lawyer and helping people out with law. So why not use tools that just make it more, make it possible, make it easier for both parties to have good conversations and to get their legal stuff figured out.
Yeah. What I'm interested now, you talked about TimeQube Online. Is that another product? So I presume that's then a digital version.
Yes. So in 2020, you know what happened, and and it's still happening in a way. But so the world started to change dramatically, moving away from office-based work into remote work. And that would eventually happen. We knew that for many, many years ago. We knew already that this would happen eventually, but it just started to unfold very quickly because people were locked down in their homes. And so we started to think about with TimeCube, we had really, really bad sales in back then. I think it was like mid-year. Sales dropped for the classic TimeCube, so that's why we made this other home office edition. And it immediately started to be a bestseller among customers. But other thing that we thought would be really useful is to give people that spend most of their meeting time remotely at the moment, give them a similar solution that could work for them on screen. So that's
Hmm.
exactly what TimeCube is. That's an app you download, you run it on, and it's basically a small square which you put somewhere on your screen, which is semi-transparent. Um, that basically shows you the progress of time in the same way. It changes colors, but we're working on a solution that will connect to your own calendar so that when you have a calendar event in your calendar, it's going to basically know it all by itself and it's going to turn on and disappear when the meeting is over. Plus, maybe giving you a few clues about what's the upcoming meeting, that you have the meeting in like 5-10 minutes. But that's what we currently work on. And we're basically we want to launch this because we've already been working on it for a couple of months, pivoted because the initial idea was too complicated. So now we're thinking that in Q1 we're going to have the new time cube that basically anyone that has it connected to their calendar, when you have the app, it will just go on screen. So in a case where you're, for example, inviting your customer and you're adding an invitation to their calendar, whenever they have the app, and they don't even have to sign up. Whenever they have the app, it will just show automatically there's a meeting, and for both you and your client, the cube will just appear on screen.
So can you also use it for online meetings? Because like I said, my example where I sometimes have to rein in Michael and keep his time, is there a way where I can use it in the tool and show him
You
that
can
he
use
needs to?
it with any software because it floats above all other applications. So you can use it with your video conferencing software. You can use it with your productivity software. It's just on screen every time you have a meeting. It's there.
Ah, very
So
cool.
where shall we transfer the money?
I see, guys. Stop there. We still have some work to do, but I would be very happy if you guys could test when
Just
we
meant to
have
say we're
a
great.
testable
We're
version.
great product testers.
Yeah,
Awesome,
she's
awesome,
she's the
awesome,
best bounty. She's the best bug bounty hunter in the galaxy.
awesome. So I remember to add you to the testers list when we have
Yay!
the
So
beta.
yeah, we're very interested.
And just
Definitely.
for full disclosure, because I have a skill of finding the one bug. There is also a self-help therapy group that's called a bit like "Help, Katarina broke my software." So just so you know what you're getting yourself into, we'd love to test it, and
Ah,
we'll give you all the love and feedback you want. But I might just find more than you bargained for.
that's awesome because the more you find, the more we can fix, and it's money saved. And I think it's also so when it gets to customers, they will have to use less nerves on the app where it has less bugs. So feel free to test it out.
Yes, yes, we'd love to. We'd love to.
So, what are your other plans as far as you're allowed to tell us in the future? More versions of the TimeCube, maybe a bit smaller one to better be portable, or something completely different?
Right. So TimeCube Online is right now like the biggest thing on our agenda because we just have to be there in the software industry on the productivity software market. And we have tested out the idea with hardware, and now we just want to move and run a similar thing with software. Possibly TimeCube Online or whatever we call it, TimeCube Online or TimeCube Meeting Assistant, would then turn into being a productivity assistant hub that you have on your screen that basically helps you stay productive, helps you stay focused, maybe connecting a lot of different third-party solutions around productivity, around mindfulness. So it's like a one-stop shop for productivity and mindfulness that we could have. Because mindfulness was one of the topics that was very close to all of us in the company. And actually using colors and being a no stress device is actually in line with the whole mindfulness thinking. So we're definitely going to focus on developing TimeQube Online further. Uh, Early next year, we're running for an investment as well because we've been running the company for 2 years and haven't been really externally invested. We played the cards pretty well because we did the back in 2018. I don't know if you guys remember. We did a pre-sale action where basically we did not have the product, but we had a pre-launch whereas we were selling the cubes that didn't exist yet, and people were interested because it was an interesting idea. I think still is. So now we're running for a bigger investment next year, and probably we're focused on software. But in the long run, we would love to have a final version of hardware and software TimeCube that talk to each other and that are seamlessly connected and integrated. And that would connect all the software cubes people might have on their on their screens with the hardware they have in their offices. That would be an amazing network of time cubes.
So now I'm interested, apart from TimeCube, obviously, what are the software tools you use and you can recommend?
I'm not a geek when it comes to hardware. I'm really not a geek. But one hardware tool that I'm using constantly since I think decades ago is an external monitor. And people often don't realize how much help it is and how much more order it brings to your mind when you have an external screen or two. So I'm always using one because I think why we're not productive, why we're not focused, so the lack of focus, and maybe why our mind constantly wanders is that we have too many different things shouting at us, like tabs in Chrome browser or different apps that are yelling at us to pay attention to them. And I think it's really important to structure and order the way you work visually, and therefore the external monitor. As for software, I'm using Slack and Telegram for communication. As I said, the company's been since the beginning run without physical meetings between team members. So we're using Slack and Telegram to communicate. But it's really important. Like real-time communication is really, really important for teams to be able to function in a remote environment. And then for personal to-do lists, I'm using Todoist, which is a really nice piece of software and a very minimalistic one when it comes to how it looks like and how it functions. And I really love minimalism. You already probably know from the TimeCube, the product itself, that it's quite minimalistic, right? That's the way it was supposed to be from the beginning. Thank you. And so we use Google Suite for managing documents, and that's it. There's nothing else we work with. And personally, I cannot think of any other software that I really use on a daily basis.
Michael, any final questions to wrap up?
Yes, the final wrap-up question. Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek, definitely. Don't ask me why, though. It's just my intuition telling me.
It was the right answer.
So you get extra brownie points.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Thank you very much that we could have you on our podcast. It was very interesting, not only because you have developed a really cool product, which we both, me and Katharina, use on a daily basis, but also for telling us a bit about productivity and productivity methods. And well, we're looking forward to also try out the software version when it's available. And well, for me, as I said, getting 2 more time cubes. Yes, and thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. It was really good to be here. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Danke, dass ihr beim Nerds of Law Podcast zugehört habt. Auf unserer Webseite nerdsoflaw.com könnt ihr das Impressum, Datenschutzinformationen und viele spannendere Dinge finden. Dieser Podcast ist durch eine Creative Commons by Non-Commercial 4.0 International License geschützt. Das bedeutet, ihr dürft den Podcast kopieren, mit Freunden teilen, mit der Information, wo der Podcast herkommt und ihn nicht für kommerzielle Zwecke verwenden. Das Urheberrecht für die Musik liegt bei Mick Borday. Ihr findet seine Webseite unter mickborday.com. Live long and prosper. Eure Nerds of Law.